Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. I am one of your hosts, Memo, and right beside me, I've got Hoops. How you doing?
What's going on, man? I've been doing all right for the most part. Just getting through in life, same old routine per usual, and it's been going to say the least. How have you been?
Probably the same. It's been going, just working. I guess big news that I've already told you, but my family just got a dog, so we've been hyper fixating on that. We've been, it's a puppy, so it's a lot to take care of, a big responsibility. So yeah, I'm like an uncle right now. I take care of the dog from time to time, but yeah, he's fun. He's very funny, and he's has stopped biting me. So I think that's a W. I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, just been working, just trying to push it through. And something that I have been doing this week is making my top point guards list. As you can tell from the title of this episode, we have collected and made a list of what we think is the best 15 point guards in the league right now, or at least going into this upcoming season. And I love making these type of videos, these list videos. We've done a few of these in the past. We've done all-time Lakers players. We've done like a mid-season who are the best players in the league video as well. Um, like sometime last year. So I love doing these. Even on my like music channel, I have like list week where every year at the end of the year I talk about the best and worst music, and I list it all out for everybody to know what I liked, what I didn't like. So these type of videos I love doing for sure. But before we get into it, we got some news. Should we start off with the Lonnie Walker news from earlier this week?
Yeah, we can start off with the lesser of the two of the headlines. Um, so earlier this week, free agent guard Lonnie Walker IV had agreed to sign a 1 year deal with the Boston Celtics. However, it's not one of those typical contracts. The Celtics only signed him to an Exhibit 10. And just for those that might not be aware, an Exhibit 10 allows the Celtics to give a bonus to Lonnie if he is waived after training camp and plays for the team's G League affiliate in Maine, the Maine Red Claws. So, in other words, they're practically like encouraging him to play in the G League if he does not make the final roster cut. So, for a guy like Lonnie, like I feel like he clearly deserves to be on a real roster. And we mentioned this like off the camera earlier in the week that we don't know how he's been available for this long and ended up falling in the Celtics laps. Really frustrating for sure. But yeah, at the end of the day though, obviously it's just an Exhibit 10 contract, so you never know what's gonna happen if he'll make the roster. And if he doesn't make the roster, I'm sure another team will sign him. But overall though, even though I hate that it was the Celtics, I am happy for Lonnie that he is getting an opportunity.
Yeah, me too. Like I still think about sometimes that Lonnie Walker game against the Warriors when he was with our Lakers. Like he has shown signs
Saved
of
us.
talent, of uh just being there when you need him the most. So I'm very surprised, as you said, that like nobody would pick him up for this long during free agency. Like every the whole league was sleeping. Like at least our Lakers had an excuse where we didn't have a roster spot, but like there's several teams that could need a point guard. Like maybe the Magic. They've got some good guards there, but not really a ball distributor. I'm not saying that Lonnie is the best at that, but still he could be a vital piece that can help a team out, whether it's on the bench, whether it's maybe even starting. He's still very young. He's like 25, and then last year he averaged almost 10 points. And I believe, let me double check. Yeah, 38% on threes, which is pretty good as well. Like, this guy is talented. He's still young. It's a talent that people should have considered, but no. It of course it was Brad Stevens making the phone calls, getting him on the Celtics, and it's just making that team seem scarier and scarier, which is unfortunate because we don't want another championship for the Celtics. That's the last thing I think most NBA fans would want. But yeah, this is just another great piece for them. Brilliant move from the Celtics. Even though maybe not, what's the word? Like, needle pusher? I forgot the phrase, but
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's not anything groundbreaking, but still, it's just another great player to add on a great roster.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, for that team, not really like a needle breaker. Their roster is already really stacked, and they were going to be really good regardless. And for all we know, he might not even make the final roster cut at the end of training camp. But like bringing in that a little extra competition for depth opportunities never hurts. And props to Brad Stevens for making another great move for that franchise, which we hate to see, but giving props where it's due.
Yeah, we have to. Like, I've always liked Brad Stevens too. I've always thought he was a great coach. I thought he's been snubbed for Coach of the Year several times, and now that he has a bigger role for the Celtics organization, he's been killing it there as well. It's crazy. Like, I am like definitely very jealous of the Celtics because as we all know, the Lakers couldn't do anything this offseason, and the Celtics were able to do enough to continue looking like the biggest threat for a championship.
Yeah, crazy.
It is. Speaking of crazy, though, big extension money going to Stephen Curry, who just extended for only 1 year, and in that 1 year is making $62.6 million. That is generational money in 1 year. I would hope one day I'd be able to see a fraction of that money, let alone $62.6 million in a year. Isn't that crazy?
It is very crazy because, like, usually I feel like even for like the typical NBA superstar, the most that they'll usually get for 1 year would be like 25 or 30. But this is like over double that, which is like insane. Like when I first saw that figure, I thought like, did I read it wrong? Is that really for just 1 year? I thought maybe it was an amount for 2 years. But no, they're paying him like pretty much double or maybe even triple the typical superstars contract. Like, it's pretty insane, not gonna lie.
It is, and so his extension will make it so that his run with the Warriors will extend until the 2026-2027 season. And this is a lot of money for, like, I guess an aging point guard, but it's not like any aging point guard. It's Stephen Curry. He hasn't shown any signs of aging, in my opinion.
I don't think.
At least not to a great extent. So this is, I think this is a pretty safe move, especially since there are like fears of him leaving the Warriors after what happened to Clay, and we all know the Warriors aren't going to be as good anymore. At least this
Oh yeah,
upcoming season, there's been hints where Stephen Curry seemed like he might not want to be a long life or long time Warrior, uh, because he wants to be in a winning position. But this is at least a little sign of hope for Warriors fans. And
yeah,
well, I was gonna say hopefully they could get the best out of him, but no, I don't want that. I don't want the Warriors
yeah,
fans to be happy. They should be happy that he extended, but not happy that they are
yeah.
gonna be winning anytime soon.
I agree. Don't want the Warriors to have any more success. Happy for Steph to get paid crazy numbers, even though clearly he already has a lot of money, but he only adds bank now. So shout out to him for that. Um, we'll see what happens after that 1 year is over. Maybe Steph will test his waters in free agency, or who knows, demand a trade.
Maybe even
Um,
retire. Like
maybe
a lot
like
could happen.
yeah, it's possible. I mean, like, obviously, like he's older. He's not crazy old to the
Yeah,
point where he can play several more years. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
like not everybody could be LeBron, uh,
Yeah,
playing in their 40s at a high level. But if someone else can, I'm sure Steph is the type of player that could.
yeah, I agree. Um, Steph, like the haters will say that Steph is washed, but no, he isn't.
Not at
Like
all.
he still had a really good season last year. People say that he had a lackluster season. I just didn't see it honestly. Like maybe here and there he wasn't quite as good as like his prime. But then again, like that was his prime, like several years back when he was younger. Now, like obviously he's aging, so he won't quite be at that level, but he's still really good. So um, yeah, definitely not washed.
Definitely not washed. If he was washed, I'd be the first person to say it for sure. I love hating. That's kind of like what I do. But no, he's not washed at all. He's in fact
Yeah.
very good, and spoiler alert, makes it pretty high on my top 15 point guards list, which I feel
Oh
like
yeah, no doubt.
definitely. So I feel like this is a good transition to that. And I've got a couple questions before we start. What were some criteria or things you thought about while making your list? Because it was definitely tough for me, and I had to try to balance like age, potential, but like also their situations on their team, or how much of their stats really matter within uh, what's been going on with their team. Like, are they high stats but low wins? Are they low? Are they like the third best player in the team? There's a lot of things to balance out. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah,
But what were some things that you thought were important going into this?
definitely several factors. Also, as you mentioned, I think one of them is like potential. That one's very important. Another one could be like so I try not to let the past influence too much because I think because obviously this list is about the present. Um, but some of the past could factor in, like if it happened last season. So there's that. I would say another thing, it's like stats is some factor, but not everything. Like I didn't really look into like every player's stats like thoroughly like that. I mostly ranked based on like other factors, honestly, like the potential um, and ceiling, all that stuff. But yeah, honestly, several factors, but I mostly ranked it on like potential and like ceiling, to be honest, I would say.
All right, that's fair. I feel like. Yeah. Did you have any honorable mentions before we jump into our top 15? which like before we start, I guess just to let everybody know, we're doing top 15 point guards this week. We are gonna do every position in the NBA. So next week, shooting guards, then small forwards, power forwards, setters. But yeah, this week we're doing point guards. And do you have any honorable mentions?
Um, let's see. Real quickly,
I've got a
because
handful.
yeah, because I'll be honest, like I didn't necessarily list honorable mentions just because I didn't think there were any crazy ones. But if I were to mention honorable mentions, um, let's see. Who would I put as an honorable mention? I would say honestly, oh, I know, I think that a few guys that I can put an honorable mention. One of them could be TJ McConnell coming off a pretty good year with Indiana. I didn't put him on my top 25, but I could see why someone would put him in his top 25 because of what he did last season. Like, he has been in the league for a while for the most part as like a bench warmer type, but I feel like last year he really took a leap. Me personally, I would say he's not quite top 25, but I would not be shocked if someone put him there, and if so, I honestly wouldn't be mad. Another player I honestly have as an honorable mention that easily could have made the list, but ultimately fell short. Fred VanVleet. He's done like quite a bit throughout his career. Obviously, mostly was the Raptors. Last year was his first year with the Rockets, and he had a pretty good season, but obviously it wasn't like his peak or whatnot. But I think he deserves an honorable mention because he's still a really good player, and the potential is clearly there.
I
Um,
agree. He's definitely one of my honorable mentions. I believe he averaged
mm,
like 18 points, 8 assists, and he helped the Rockets a lot. Like just because before him and Dylan Brooks getting there, the Rockets were a disaster. They were just a bunch of kids fooling around. But now that there's some
yeah,
adults in the building, they started winning some more. Um, and yeah, so I had him as an honorable mention. TJ McConnell was a little shocking to hear from you. He
yeah.
was good. He was definitely good during the playoffs. I'll say that. I just didn't
Mm-hmm.
expect him to be mentioned in this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, like, the only reason why I mentioned him is because I saw, like, player efficiency rating. His player efficiency rating was really high. So, gotta give him an honorable mention for that.
I might be
Anyhow,
sleeping.
yeah, I think so. But yeah, I think one more honorable mention I'll bring up, just for the sake of it. Darius Garland, honestly, he kind of had like an up and down season last year, and pretty inconsistent in the playoffs. And a lot of people honestly say like he's pretty similar to like D'Angelo Russell type. Like you don't really know what you're gonna expect from him. He can either be really hot one game or he can be really cold one game. Or he can be really good or he can be really bad. Um, but I give him an honorable mention because obviously we've seen how good he could be when he's at his peak. And obviously he was an all-star not too long ago, like 2020 when the all-star, or no, 2022 when the all-star was in Cleveland. So that was only 2 years ago, actually. Um, yeah, I would say he deserves an honorable mention. Aside from that, there were a few other guys that like good point guards, but didn't really think of them honestly as like needed to be brought up. Honestly, but I think Memo, you can bring up your honorable mention list now that I mentioned mine.
Okay, so I mentioned Fred VanVleet. Darius Garland was also a point guard I was thinking of. Again, like as you mentioned, he had a up and down season. A good a reason or a big reason why was because of injuries. Like he was out a lot. He had to recover from injuries. So That made sense. I feel like there was no excuses for the playoff performance though. Like he
Oh yeah.
really sucked, to be frank. But again, he has a lot of potential. He was an all-star. We've seen him scored 50 before. Like this guy is a bucket getter. He can. He has great handles. He can play make a bit. I think he's great. I think in the right situation, he could be a phenomenal piece to a winning team. He's just not there yet. He still needs to figure out his role in Cleveland now that Donovan Mitchell has been there for a couple years, and hopefully this is the year that they figure it out. But honestly, the one of them has to go, and it's definitely not going to be Donovan Mitchell. That's at least what I think should be done. But
Yeah.
who
Unless
knows?
he asked to, unless he asked to out, but that would be a story for a different day.
Yeah, yeah. Some other honorable mentions. I threw in D'Angelo Russell in there just because Lakers bias. Uh, he did have like a great shooting season. I think he set a Lakers record for the most 3-pointers made by a Laker. So I think that's cool. He has his moments where he is looking like the third star in LA, carrying the team at times during rough patches, hitting big shots. But he also has his moments where he's like looking like Lakers Russell Westbrook, just shooting shots that he shouldn't be shooting. Like, what you
Yeah.
doing?
Sometimes even worse, honestly.
Debatable, but yeah,
Yeah.
I see that. So, he's definitely like in the 20 range, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
and then the last two I wanted to mention was James Harden, who, in at this point of the career, like he's not MVP caliber James Harden, but he is an elite passer, incredible playmaker. He won't get you 30 every night, but sometimes he'll get you 20 and like 10, 15 assists. And it does help, especially when he was at Philly. Like, he was a big reason why Embiid got that MVP because he was setting up Embiid perfectly. But yeah, great point guard, just not MVP level anymore, which, like, that's James Harden now. Like, he's aged. It happens.
Yeah.
But I feel like the biggest cut for me that I had to make was Derek White. Uh,
Yeah.
Debatably the best defensive point guard in the league. He led the league, or he led all guards in blocks per game, I believe. I think total blocks as well. He is very methodical when it comes to trying to get his blocks in. He obviously steals very well. He's just a phenomenal defender, and when he gets going, he could drain threes like crazy. So yeah, that's Derek White was probably my biggest cut. I feel like every team in the league wants a player like Derek White. Uh, so yeah, I guess he would be like my number 16.
Okay. Fair enough. And I will say this, adding on to a few guys you mentioned as honorable mentions. So James Harden, I was gonna mention as an honorable mention. Um, I kind of had like a slight debate on whether to classify him as a point guard or a shooting guard, honestly, because like he just like plays on and off both the two positions. And I think last season did he play like shooting guard a little bit more because like Russ kind of controlled the point, or were they not on the court a lot at the same time? Because I didn't really watch the Clippers a lot, honestly.
I think he became more and more of a point guard since joining Philly. Because
Yeah,
like Brooklyn had he had Kyrie. And he's always been like a great playmaker. He's always had great assist numbers, even as a shooting
yeah,
guard, even during his prime in Houston. But I feel like it was Philly where he was like cemented as the point guard and became really good at it. Really changed his career in a way because like he's not falling off,
yeah,
but he's like starting to fall off. It if you know what I'm getting. At
Yeah,
least from the
I think.
highs that he was at. Now he's a little lower, but still great, still good.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh. Yeah. So pretty much what I'm saying is like part of the reason why I didn't mention him on the honorable mention is because I didn't know which position to classify him as. Like I kind of think of Harden as like a shooting guard just because he like shoots a lot. But then it's like these, as you mentioned, the last few years he has played the point a little bit more. So kind of had a little bit of back and forth there. I might consider putting him in the next episode, honestly. But then again, like it's really based on your opinion, like what position you want to
yeah,
classify him as.
yeah. I think
Um,
this is gonna be just like a common problem we're gonna face because it's
yeah,
like basketball's been becoming a little less, or it's like positionless almost. Like we have
yeah,
forwards playing like point
true.
guards. We have a center who's the best passer in the league. Like
I know.
it's all wonky and stuff. So if you consider him as a shooting guard, I don't blame you because if I
Yeah.
were to rank shooting guards, he would be like a top five
Uh-huh.
shooting guard, like of all
Oh yeah.
time. So,
Uh-huh.
uh,
Right.
like
I
like
mean,
all
like,
time sake, I would think James Harden is a shooting guard, but at the moment,
yeah,
I feel like he's a point guard.
yeah, and I think that honestly, like classifying him as a shooting guard honestly helps his cause in the all-time rankings because like there's a lot more great point guards than there is great shooting guards all time. So there's that.
Yeah, and also like his
But yeah,
prime, he was a shooting guard, so I think that helps a lot too.
right. So that being said, I will say if it was this video, I would put him as an honorable mention. But if it's the next video, he's definitely on my list. Um, and then adding on now to Derek White, honestly, I probably should have mentioned him in my honorable mentions too, because I did not put him on my top 15. Spoiler alert, but he's definitely worthy. And and him not being on the top 15 is really no knock against him. I mean, like clearly he's still a really good point guard. And as you mentioned, you said he's probably your top six. He's probably your number 16. I would say probably around there for me also, like shortly after, barely getting cut from this list. So yeah, definitely a very good honorable mention that you listed because obviously we've seen how important he is to the Celtics during their championship run and playoff runs in the previous seasons. And like 2022, when they traded for him at the deadline, they immediately got significantly better. The Celtics that year, if you don't recall, didn't really start the year that hot. Like by New Year's, they were like barely even 500. And then after the All Star break, they just completely went off. And a lot of it had to do with like the trades, like Derek White trade, getting rid of Dennis Schroeder, which he's not a horrible player, but for that team, he just wasn't a fit. Um, and it goes on, stuff like that. But yeah, Derek White definitely worthy of being an honorable mention and honestly could have made this list, but I just feel like there were some other guys that were a little bit more worthy.
Should we talk about those other guys? Should we reveal 15 through 11?
Yeah, I say let's do it.
All right, so we're gonna go by fives, and we'll again go 15 through 11. Ooh,
Okay.
okay.
Kind of similar-ish,
Yeah, we kind of got a similar
like
list.
out of order
Uh,
a little bit. Yeah.
We got a couple
Well,
the
there
same
are a
order.
few that are in the same spot.
All
Yeah.
right. You want to list out your guys first?
Yeah. So number 15, I got Drew Holiday. Number 14, I got Cade Cunningham. Number 13, I got Tyrese Maxey. Number 12, I got De'Aaron Fox. And at number 11, I got Jamal Murray.
And for me, number 15, I also have Drew Holiday. Number 14, I have LaMelo Ball. 13, I have Cade Cunningham. 12, I have Kyrie Irving. And 11, Jamal Murray. So Jamal Murray and Drew Holiday ended up being the same for both of us. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Drew Holiday is the reason why Derek White didn't make the cut. It's
And
his
it
own
makes
very
sense.
teammate. I feel like there is a debate where you could say Derek White is better, and I feel like
Yeah.
moving forward, like Drew Holiday is a bit older, so I feel like uh, just,
It's debatable.
yeah, it's debatable whether Derek White will be better or not. But you know, he's a
Uh-huh.
two-time All Star. He is one of the best defenders in his position. He can score when needed as well. He has shown where like he could be a like your third scoring option to a championship team, like what he did for the Bucks. So yeah, that's why he barely made the edge over Derek White. I see that we have Cade Cunningham in a similar position. Why did Cade Cunningham make it in your top 15?
Honestly, a lot of it has to do with the high ceiling, high potential. Um, Obviously, he missed the previous season, I believe, due to injury, and he had a pretty good bounce back last season. Um, and pretty much showing like obviously he was the number one pick in 2021, and for good reason. Um, he last year obviously okay, correction. He did not miss the entire 2022-2023 season, but he only played 12 games due to injury. So I just had to make that clear real quick. But in his 12 games, he did do pretty good, like averaged nearly 20 points, shot 41% from the field. Three-point shooting was one of his weaknesses that year, only 28%. But last year, though, he was better, playing 62 games as opposed to 12, so relatively healthy um, overall. He averaged nearly 23 points, shot nearly 45% from the field, and he ended up shooting 36% from three, which was much better. Um, yeah, Cade Cunningham was he pretty much showed the league like his real potential once again and why he was the number one pick last year, I believe. So that was why I had to include him on my list, honestly. Like, he showed great potential on why he is, I guess, why he was picked where he was.
Yeah, he for sure has potential. I don't think he would ever be like the best player on a championship team, but I think he could be a very important piece, like second or third
Yeah,
best player. He is a capable scorer, and he is a really good ball distributor, great playmaker. He is just unfortunately in Detroit, so that does not help
yeah.
him out a lot at all. But like even last year when we saw him struggling, uh, with the Pistons when they were like having the longest losing streak of all time, or at least tying it, he showed flashes of like greatness. He was like having 40 bombs and desperately trying to carry his team to a win, and he couldn't get it done because he had Killian Hayes and James Wiseman on the roster. Like, what is he supposed to do? So I think with more capable 3-point shooters around him, I think those assist
Yeah.
numbers are gonna go up, and yeah, just he just needs more talent around him, and then I feel like his overall game will improve as well. So I am glad you have him on your top 15, and we have a similar range. Uh, I feel like for me, I think the more shocking part is having De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey in this range. I guess I'll would like wait on asking you why. Like I
Yeah.
kind of want to see the players you have above to see if that makes more sense. Because I
Yeah.
feel like this group, the Jamal Murray's, the De'Aaron Foxes, the Tyrese Maxey's, these are like low level all stars, so they're kind of around the same tier. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll wait.
Also, uh, coincidence. All of those guys went to Kentucky, so
Oh, I have never
I
made that
guess.
connection. Wow.
Yeah. So I guess that says a lot. That Kentucky creates a lot of great NBA talent point guards.
I guess my last question about your list before you can like question mine or explain any of your picks is: do you have LaMelo Ball on your list at all? Like, is he higher or just not on your
Um,
list?
he's higher.
Higher. That's very interesting. I have him this
Yeah.
low because like the man can't be healthy. Like his ankles and knees are like rooting against him for some reason. So he barely plays, but when he does play, he is a great playmaker. He is a very flashy player. He's fun to watch. He is a great scorer as well, a good 3-point shooter. I think the idea of LaMelo Ball is awesome, but we barely get to see him play anymore. Like it's been a while since he's been an All Star, like because of all these injuries. So like if he is back and healthy, I could see him rising up. But yeah, I think that's the only reason why I have him this low.
Fair. I understand the concern of his health, honestly, and why you put him lower. But honestly, I just put him higher just because of like we've seen how good he could be when he was on the floor, and I think he proven his worth. Honestly, um, like the injuries is definitely a valid concern, but I like the potential he has, honestly, and like I think he could have like a bounce back season and hopefully stay healthy. I mean, like obviously it sounds like asking a lot, but we've seen like players miraculously be able to stay on the floor after commonly getting injured a lot, like year in and year out. So maybe it's just me trying to be optimistic, but I think there's the potential there that LaMelo will get back to the form he was in, let's say, his rookie and sophomore years.
Yeah, I hope so. He's like again one of the most exciting players to watch, and I believe his All Star year he led the Hornets at least into the play-in tournament or something like that. I don't remember playoffs, but like
Not the play. They
not the
lost
playoff.
in the play
The
against the Hawks, I think.
which is not the biggest deal in the world, but for Charlotte, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlotte, I think he led them to the play in his rookie year too, maybe, if I'm not mistaken.
So that
So
that
he
just
actually,
shows how
so like,
he can
yeah,
impact his team because of his
yeah,
talent.
healthy. Yeah, if anything, it shows that healthy LaMelo Ball can lead a not so good team to a respectable standing. Like without him, we've seen how bad they are. But with him, they're able to like be somewhat of a middle of the pack team and at least put themselves in a position to have a chance at making it, even if they don't make it. Like definitely shows how good he is there.
I'll agree on you with that one. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um. Anything you want to talk about uh, in regards to my list, or do you want to talk about why you have certain players in on certain positions?
Yeah, let's see. I will say this, for the most part, our list is pretty similar, and I do have all of the players that you listed on my list as well. Um, I do happen to have Kyrie a little bit higher though. Um, so I guess do you want to maybe mention a little bit why you have him in this range?
Yeah, I guess. First of all, as I told you right before we started recording, that I was gonna make a quick switch. My quick switch was Kate Cunningham and Kyrie. I had Kyrie even lower,
Oh,
but
so it's literally. Oh, okay, I see.
so I
Yeah,
guess my opinion seems like I'm not the biggest Kyrie fan, but I am. I love Kyrie Irving. I think he's a great point guard. He's just not Cleveland Kyrie Irving. He is not,
Yeah.
as good as he was in like 2016, where he was winning a chip with LeBron. He's definitely aged. He's not the greatest defender in the world. He has his inconsistencies, as we saw in the playoffs. Uh,
Yeah.
there will be times where it seems like him and Luka are the most skilled offensive backcourt in NBA history, and then there's times where he scores 9 points and doesn't really facilitate. Would try sometimes on defense, but that's never been a part of his game. And yeah, I feel like sometimes he settles too much on jump shots, which isn't even his strong suit at times. He always seems like he's taking like the hardest shots possible, and a lot of the times he does make them. But there's times where like let's try to get an easier shot instead. Like let's make it easy on ourselves. He's fun to watch. I again love Kyrie, but yeah, he's just a lesser version of what he was before, and what he was before was a top 10 player or a top 10 point guard, but I don't think he's there anymore.
Okay, I can understand those points. Yeah. Aside from that, I guess I guess one of the things that we haven't really mentioned that we could briefly mention is how we both have Jamal Murray at number 11. Um, Me personally, I would say I put him where I did because, like, I do think that the guys that I listed are better than him, like, potential wise. Um, and probably overall accomplished a little bit more in their careers also. Well, I guess for like a good amount of them, not all of them. But obviously he's still really good. And obviously we have seen like like Olympic play and NBA play is not the same. But I mean like obviously we've seen the narratives on how he disappeared in the Olympics. Like he can't survive without Jokic. Um I don't want to like um use that as like one of the kryptonites to him from this list. But like I think that 11 sounds fair. Like he could have been a top 10 point guard, but there's just other guys that happen to be like a little bit there, more there potential wise. And like honestly, now that I think about it, he could have been even lower. Like I definitely could have put in De'Aaron Fox ahead of him. Maybe I could have put in Tyrese Maxey ahead of him. But ultimately, though, I think I did put him ahead of those guys because he did happen to win that championship last year. And obviously, that's not really solely because of him. Like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
team game and whatnot. But I think that ultimately, I think I did put him there because he's done a little bit more in his career, like accomplishment wise. So I would say that's partially the reason why I felt like 11 was a fair range for Jamal Murray. Like, done pretty good in his career, has some holes, but overall, still really good. And just barely falling out of the top 10. I guess, do you want to give like a brief explanation on why you believe 11 was also the right spot for him?
Well, let me just start by saying I do think De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey are better than Jamal Murray, for several reasons. Like I feel like if you replace Jamal Murray with a De'Aaron Fox with a Tyrese Maxey, not only would they won a championship with Jokic, but they probably would have won the championship last year with Jokic as well. Uh,
Oh,
because,
maybe.
or I guess not last year, this year.
Oh, yeah,
Because
this.
Jamal, as great as he is, as he's shown he could be a playoff riser this year, it was not really the case. Like he did hit 2 game winners on the Lakers, but before
Yeah.
those game winners, he was having a horrible game. He would be missing all his shots
Yeah.
and then make the game winner. And then when
I
he
know that was frustrating.
faced Minnesota, he got clamped like very aggressively by the Timberwolves defense. So
Yeah,
I feel like Jamal Murray is great, but he is not the same caliber player as De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Maxey. I feel like they're a bit better at playmaking. Jamal Murray's not really a playmaker like that. He's more of a scorer, which is great when he's like making those shots. But when he's not, then like, what are you doing out there? He's not really doing much.
yeah, and that's fair. I personally still believe that the peak Jamal Murray we saw was when in the bubble when he had those like 40-point games, and like it was really fun. Obviously, seeing like him and Donovan Mitchell go back and forth, like both of them scoring 40 bombs
That was just
against
peak
each other.
basketball in general.
Yeah, peak basketball. Like, yeah, I will say, if it was that peak Jamal Murray, I would probably pick him over those other two guys, De'Aaron and Maxey. But that's the problem, right? He's just not consistent like that. And I know like he went through that really bad like injury of like what was it was an ACL tear or whatever, something like that. I forget exactly, but that made him miss like a full season. So that plays factor. But yeah, overall, I would honestly say the points you said were valid. And looking back, maybe I should have even had him even lower. But I think 11 is honestly fine for Jamal.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, since we both have him at 11, I feel like
Yeah,
again, as I mentioned before, I just think De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey should be higher. Um,
yeah.
do you want to
I
explain why they're in this position?
I think the reason is just because like some of these other guys that I listed. So I guess I kind of a little bit played some factor of like what some of these guys accomplished in their careers thus far. Also, in addition to like the current season standing, like for example, not to spoil who I have later in the list, but I feel like some of these guys just have been like a little bit more polished in terms of proving their talents to the extremes in the past. Versus like these guys, I feel like they're just like kind of like in a way reaching the surface of their peak right now. Maybe not as much De'Aaron Fox because he's already shown how good he has been and he's already been an all-star. But Tyrese Maxey really his breakout season was last season. And before that, he was really good, but it was really last year where he looked like he could have possibly been like an all star caliber. So that is why I have them a little bit lower than maybe they could have been, honestly. But not no knock though. It was definitely a little bit tough for me ranking them. Maybe I should have ranked them ahead of Jamal Murray, but yeah, I would say somewhere around this range just for now. If we were to do this list again next year, I could potentially see them getting like a lot higher, maybe,
Okay, that
depending on what happens, I guess.
yeah, that explanation makes sense to me. I feel like just getting like a grasp of like their total or their entire, I guess not entire, but just looking back at what they've accomplished throughout their career and try to
Yeah,
rank it like that it makes sense. Like I have De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey over Kyrie Irving, but that doesn't mean I believe they're better than Kyrie all time. I think Kyrie is the all
yeah,
time better point guard.
yeah, of
But at the moment, I
course.
do think they're both better. But let's see
Probably. Yeah.
how much better, because I think we talked about every player on our list, or on
Yeah,
our
we have.
current five. So let's bring out the next five.
Yeah, so 10 to 6 or 6 to 10.
6 to 10.
All right. Okay.
Mm, you
Some
know,
similar ones, some different ones.
yeah, I have a feeling our top five is gonna look very very similar
I think so.
because so far we've got all it within these 10 players. We have like every single one. They're
Yeah.
all here. They're all the same
Yo,
players.
it's it's crazy. Like how we pretty much I think looks like we all included the same set of players just in a different sequence.
Right.
Um,
But
very interesting to say the least. But if anything, that probably just proves that we know our ball.
yeah. uh,
Yeah.
Let me go over my list. Starting at 10, I have Damian Lillard. At 9, De'Aaron Fox. 8, Tyrese Maxey. 7, John Morant. And 6, Trey Young.
Okay. So for me, um, number 10, I have LaMelo Ball. Number 9, Kyrie Irving. Number 8, Damian Lillard. Number 7, Trey Young. Number 6, John Morant. So we have some like similar sequences,
Yeah, they're so
like towards
similar.
the
Like,
top.
I would ask what's like your biggest gripe with my list and vice versa, but like again, they're very similar. Like
Yeah,
mine
very similar.
before was Lamelo. I feel like Lamelo's too high, but you did have a
Mm.
pretty good explanation. I guess Kyrie for me is a bit high as well. Why do you have
Uh,
Kyrie at number 9?
yeah, partially due to what he's accomplished in his career. Also, like, now I'm not gonna go back as far as like 2016. That was 8 years ago. Um, but I do put into factor how like he still is a really good player, and he had like quite a good bounce back last year. Now, obviously, he had a few of those like somewhat disappointing years in Brooklyn, partially due to like the off court issues and whatnot. But I think last year he really did prove that like he's still that guy. And obviously in the playoffs he did disappear a little bit at times. He was inconsistent, and definitely some of those are very inexcusable because when the Mavs needed him most, he kind of just vanished, and that's why they lost the finals. But I think the reason why I did put him this high was partially out of like a
Respect thing.
I guess you can call yeah, I guess you can call it a respect factor, like having done a good amount in the past and still being a pretty efficient player. Um but I can definitely see why De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Maxey would be higher, like in terms of the what the fate of the future may look like for those players. Because like for Kyrie, for example, the Mavericks, they clearly overachieved last season. Like they probably would not have made the finals under like regular circumstances. But shout out to them, they peaked at the right time and they had a good run. That unfortunately they didn't show up when it mattered most. That being said, yeah, honestly, I would say more so like the respect factor and somewhat considering what he did in the past was the reason why I had him this high. But I could definitely see why guys like De'Aaron and Tyrese would be higher.
Yeah, based off your explanation, it makes sense. Like when I was making my list, I was looking forward. Like I was trying to predict the top 15 players for next season, so how well they'll be for next season. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's no debate. Kyrie Irving is one of the most talented point guards I've seen with my very own eyes. Like this guy can make crazy shots. He had like the best game winner of last year with that little left-handed hook over Nikola
Oh yeah.
Jokic. Like he shows
Mm-hmm.
flashes of dog. Like he has that dog in him that not a lot of players do. And you know, again, that's why I'm a big fan of Kyrie and his game. But you know, with him disappearing in the playoffs and the lack of defense at times, that does hurt. the argument
Yeah.
there. And I feel like there's just a lot of talented point guards. Like
Yeah.
Jamal Murray's not a top 10 point guard, even though he plays like it. He was at 11 for us. Um,
Yeah.
so and then more like there's so many great point guards to talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's talk about Damian Lillard because I have him a little lower than you. I have him at 10. You have him at 8, right?
Yeah.
Why is that?
And yeah, I will say honestly for him, kind of similar to Kyrie, partially the respect factor. But honestly, one of the key reasons why I put him so high is because of how clutch he is. Like, Dame time, with those clutch game winners. Um, Last season he made that one against the Kings, I remember. And was that the only game winner he had last year?
I
Probably,
I
right?
think so. It's where Brooke Lopez was mad at him, right?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, honestly, like Dame's clutch gene just really put me over the edge in these rankings. Honestly, like, is he the same player that he was a few years ago? Probably not, but he's still really good. And then obviously you got to take in consideration that he's no longer the number one guy. He's not a number two guy after getting traded to Milwaukee. So that also plays factor to maybe why his numbers will like dip a little bit. Um, but overall, though, Dame's still really good. Hopefully, this could be his chance to win his ring. But I don't know, like the Bucks' window. Honestly, like I feel like their window is definitely closing very, very soon. So they need to like do something fast, or else maybe either they'll have to move on from him and he'll have to try to get his ring elsewhere, or maybe he just might not end up getting one. And I would hate to see that happen, honestly, because Dame does deserve to win a ring. But point blank is I put him this high mostly due to the clutch gene and also the fact that he could still like put up crazy numbers and be like a scoring like microwave to say the least. Like if you need if you are really need a basket or like instant scoring, Dame is that guy to provide instant offense and like make that clutch shot for you. So that's part of the reason why I have him this high. But I can definitely see why once again those other guys listed commonly, the Aaron and Tyrese Maxey would be like higher for this coming season,
Yeah,
which probably no, honestly.
yeah. I feel like they have a bit more potential than Dame. Am really like hoping that this was just a slump season since it was his first time at Milwaukee. He didn't have a proper training camp. He had two coaches this year.
Yeah, that was
So
nice.
and now unfortunately one of his coach now is Doc Rivers. So I don't know how much that's
Yeah,
gonna help, but maybe with a full training camp and now knowing uh, the system there at Milwaukee and the hierarchy, maybe he'll have a bounce back season. It again wasn't too long ago where this guy scored 70 in one game. Like he is a bucket getter, but he didn't really prove that as much this past season. He had his struggles during the playoffs. Uh, he had an interesting playoffs. I believe the first two games he scored like 30 plus points in the first half and then didn't score in the second half, uh, which was interesting. But like, I believe they won like at least one of those games, so it worked.
they won game one pretty handily, and Milwaukee clearly looked like the better team. I mean, like if you may recall, what happened was Giannis got injured early, and he didn't play for like a good chunk of the game, and it didn't matter. The Bucks won by a lot and blew them out. But unfortunately, from there, the Pacers kind of just took control for that series.
Yeah.
And yeah, game one, I think the huge reason was because of Dame's great play.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he did have like a really great first half. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I guess second half just relax a little bit. Didn't quite go as hard, and there we have those numbers.
Yeah, game one he was great, but I feel like it was like the last game or the last two
Yeah,
games where it was like Chris Middleton who was picking up the pace, a older, brittled Chris Middleton playing like Kobe out there. That should have
yeah,
been Dame. He is one of the most clutch players ever, and he didn't really show out where it mattered the most in this playoffs. But again, I think this is this. I'm hoping this is just a slump season, and he'll be back where he was at least a little bit next season, and be a more important piece of the puzzle there in Milwaukee. Um,
definitely agree.
and then yeah, I have De'Aaron Fox over him. I think he's a very talented guy, very underrated. I think mostly because he plays for the Kings, he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. But he's also a very clutch guy. He won Clutch Player of the Year when it was first released. He is a very fast guy, and with Sabonis, they uh, make a great pairing. He's a great mid-range shooter, and I don't know if he's at his peak or going towards his peak, but he's still pretty young, and he's been really good. So that's why I've been bothering you about this, but that's why I feel like your De'Aaron Fox placement is a little low because I'm a big fan of the guy. I've been saying that for like every guy,
Yeah,
I guess,
I mean,
but like
yeah,
I think he's
I do
really
like
good.
I do like De'Aaron Fox also. Honestly, I will say that. Um,
I think he was also top 3 in steals per game this season as well. So
oh,
he's got some
he,
hands.
yeah, he's a pretty good lockdown defender.
So that's that. Tyrese Maxey was his breakout season, as you mentioned. He averaged almost 26 points, 6 assists, and interestingly, even though it was one series, his uh, stats went up during the playoffs. He averaged almost 30 points, 5 rebounds, almost 7 assists. The percentages were a lot better. Um, I guess the reason why I don't have him even higher is because it's been only 1 year. He still
Yeah,
has a lot to prove, and also when Embiid was out, the Sixers did struggle a lot. Tyrese tried his best, but it was clear that like he really needed Embiid. He was almost like an Embiid merchant, is what I was trying to
oh yeah.
say.
I I honestly feel like they kind of need each other. Like obviously Embiid can still do his thing without Maxi, but like clearly when they go hand in hand, they're a lot better than when one of
I
them's
agree.
not.
That's true. That's true.
But but yeah, I do get what you're saying though. Like without Embiid to feed the ball to down low, he's just not quite the same. And honestly, like when Embiid was out during like however long it was in the regular season, wasn't he out for like 2 months or something, or at least 1 month, something like that? Long time, yeah. When that was the reason why the Sixers heavily dropped in standings. But yeah, obviously during that stretch, it was Tyrese's time to shine and become the number one option. Did not disappoint. But like as you mentioned, sometimes was out Embiid in the lineup. Just not quite the same. And it makes sense, obviously. Like when you have arguably the best center in the league, but I personally still think number two behind Jokic, then it's gonna make your hands a lot easier as a playmaker point guard. But when he's not in the lineup, then you'll have to rely on like his backup instead, for example, which last season, Paul Reed, he was like good. He's good, but obviously no Joel Embiid, so um like clearly a downgrade there. So I guess it makes sense why his number would dip when it beats out the lineup. But yeah, as you mentioned, huge difference though from between feeding Joel Embiid and Paul Reed.
That's true. So maybe I was a little harsh there because they both need each other. But
Yeah,
and
but you do
Tyrese
have
is
a point.
still young too. He still has a
Yeah,
lot to
he
prove,
is
and he
very
could
young.
be even better than he was last year, which he was great last year. And
I guess. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, unless you want to keep talking about Tyrese Maxey, is that the two players that we still haven't talked about within our range here is Trey Young and John Morant. You
Yeah.
have Jamal. Oh my God, Ja over Trey, and I have Trey over Ja. Do you wanna give your reason on why you think Ja is better than Trey, and then I'll do vice versa?
Yeah. I kind of feel like John Morant's game maybe like has a little bit more spice to it in a way. Um, and maybe it could be a little bit the fact like me thinking that John Morant is a more fun player to watch. Like obviously he has those crazy dunks. Could shoot the three ball still also. Obviously he's not good of a 3-point shooter as Trey is. But like I feel like just like watching Trey, watching Jaw is like really fun when he's on the floor. He's like arguably a top five, but at this moment, I don't put him at top five. Um, I think one of the I think I feel like he kind of well, I was about to say actually I was what I was about to say is not correct at all. I think Trey Young has accomplished more than Ja in his career now that I think about it because he made a conference finals and Ja did not. He made it the semifinals. But I think that it seems like Ja's impact on the team is a little bit more positive overall. And I guess like last year, the small sample size in the games that he played definitely speaks a lot of volumes. The Grizzlies were one of the worst teams in the league, and when he played, they immediately went like 5-0 to start. Like they were undefeated for several games, and then ultimately they lost a few, and then unfortunately got hurt again. But not to say discredit anything against Trey though, he's also a really good player, and I feel like a lot of people probably hate on him because foul baiting, I guess. Like when they first got rid of that rule, like the unnatural shooting form, Trey was one of the players that I guess had to adjust his game most. I think it was mostly Trey and James Harden that had to adjust because those guys like foul bait to the extreme was those unnatural shooting forms. Um, but yeah, Trey Young is still really good. Like he can also facilitate the ball really well, down feed the big man. Elite 3-point shooter. Sometimes a little bit streaky, but that's a lot of shooters. Um, I feel like definitely the case could be made for these two guys being interchangeable. Ultimately, I think that I put Ja higher mostly because I feel like overall his impact is a little bit more felt around the team. And then I guess I also put him higher because I feel like he's a more fun player to watch. But overall, I do think it is a close call though between the two.
Yeah, it's definitely close. Like we have them in the same range. I just think Trey is a bit better. I think he's a way better facilitator. Looking over here, he averaged 10.8 assists, which if he played enough games and that's what he averaged, he would have been the second leading assists per game player, right behind my next guy actually. And then as you mentioned, the 3-point shooting is a lot better compared to John Moran, and we know what my thoughts are on his shooting, based off of what we talked about a couple weeks ago. I am concerned about his lack of shooting because yes, he is very athletic. He could get to the rim, with whatever way you want, whether it's going right past a guy or going over a guy. He could get a highlight dunk, but when the games are slowed down and during the playoffs where it matters the most, sometimes you gotta make your jumpers, sometimes you gotta make your threes, and the percentages there are not ideal. I do agree that he is. You could see Ja's impact a lot more when he plays. With the small sample size from last year, he played 9 games and won 6 of them, 6 out of 9, and that was already more games that they won within that 9 game span than
Yeah.
the Grizzlies did without Ja from the beginning of the season till December. So I think that's really crazy. That's a good point for him, but again, the shooting is not there. It's really lacking. He had very, very horrible percentages, but again, the very small sample size. Maybe it would be better if he had a full season. But we know what Trey can do. He can shoot the ball from any spot in the half court. Like he is great at like long range threes. He is in the conversations with the Stephen Currys of the world, the Damian Lillards of the world. And yeah, the main reason why, I guess the two main reasons why I have Trey over Ja, because they both don't defensively, they both are like not the best. So I didn't even really consider the defense. But the main two reasons why I have Trey over Ja is the playmaking. He is one of the best passers in the league, and the shooting. I think he is a phenomenal shooter. He was uh, scoring the basket 43% field goal percentage, 37.2 3-point percentage, 85.5 3-point percentage, 58.5 true shooting percentage, which is way better than Ja, especially from three. So yeah, that I feel like in the right scenario, Trey Young could be a very important piece. Of We heard rumors about Trey Young going to the Spurs. If Trey Young went to the Spurs would be definitely a playoff team, like
Oh,
for
for
sure.
sure. Yeah. Imagine those Trey and Wemby connections, like lobs, feeding him down low, all that. Like that would be so fun to watch, honestly.
Exactly. Well, if we put Wemby and Ja on the same team, I think they'd be great. I don't think
Yeah.
they'd be as good though,
I
just for
actually
fit
do agree.
wise.
I actually do agree on that one that would be a little bit of a more bizarre fit
And that is
for
mostly
sure.
because of the elite playmaking from Trey and the fact that he could spread the floor a lot more than Ja
True
can.
that. Yeah, I do agree on that point. And I will say, as far as Ja and potentially working on getting better at his shooting, I do hope that he can definitely focus more on improving on his shooting on the basketball court and not off the court. Like, no more of those, please. Yeah, kind of out of pocket there, but yeah.
That was
Honestly,
actually
though,
really
like,
good.
yeah, I will say this though, like, I really do think that the only thing that really stops John Morant from potentially climbing up the ladder is his off court issues. Like, if he can stay out of trouble off the court, he like the the sky is the limit,
Oh yeah,
honestly.
for sure.
And yeah, and
There's
like
definitely a
obviously
world out
our
there where Ja becomes better than Trey Young. I can see that happening.
true. And like obviously in my last video when we were I mean in our last video when we were doing the 2028 Olympics video predictions, I had Ja as one of the predicted point guards on the team, and that was all, of course, assuming like peak is reached and no off court trouble going forward. But I hope that no more of that off court trouble like gets to him because really good player um, does not need to get his talents taken away due to dumb off court issues. Unfortunately, some players in the past have had that happen to them, but hopefully not him.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think that's it from the 15 to 6 range. Are you ready for the top 5?
Yeah. So now the top 5 players for the NBA. I mean, the top 5 point guards in the NBA today.
I'm very curious. I know it's for sure, or I'm hoping it's for sure the same 5, but do we
Yeah,
have it in the same order? That's the question.
that might be tough.
Let's see. Whoa, we do not have it in the same order. I
Not
am
the
actually
exact order,
a little
but
shocked about
a
something.
lot of them, a lot of them are similar.
Most of it is similar, actually.
Yeah, most of it is similar. Yeah, except for one that's like reversed.
Yeah, one that we definitely need to have a discussion about. But let's talk about who's in our top 5. So I'll go first. At number 5, I have Tyrese Halliburton. Number 4, Jalen Brunson. Number 3, Stephen Curry. Number 2, Shea. And number 1, Luka Doncic.
Yeah. So for me, number 5, I have Steph Curry. Number 4, Jalen Brunson. Number 3, Tyrese Halliburton. Number 2, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And number 1, Luka Doncic. So the one and only difference we have is the swapped between Steph and Tyrese. Um, I have Steph at 5 and Tyrese at 3, and Memo has Tyrese at 5 and Steph at 3. Um,
You've got some
I guess.
explaining to do. Why is Steph this low? Why is he not top
Um,
3?
I'm gonna say this, okay? He, as I mentioned earlier, clearly not washed, but I do think that he slightly did take like a little bit of a step back last season. And on the other hand, Tyrese took a big stride up. That was one of the reasons why I like listed Tyrese that high potentially, and Steph, I guess, that low, even though 5 isn't really that low, but maybe lower than he could have been. Um, and like honestly though, like I think that the main debate I had really wasn't even between like Tyrese and Steph. It was whether I should have put in Steph ahead of Jalen Brunson, which I considered. But like I feel like last season though, like similarly, Jalen Brunson took a really big leap forward. And like if those two guys took a leap forward and then Steph took a small leap backwards, it's not no knock against him that he's not good anymore. But like it does show a little bit of a trend to me for say like maybe I put these guys higher for going into this season. Um, Kind of a close call there, but part of the reason why is I do believe that Steph is slightly declining while Jalen and Tyrese are going upward right now. But definitely still had to keep Steph in the top 5, no doubt there.
The logic checks out. That makes sense because Brunson and Halliburton did step up from the
Yeah.
previous season, and Steph did go back a little bit, but I still feel
Uh-huh.
like they haven't done enough to surpass Steph. They've been great, but like especially Halliburton, I don't think he quite passed Steph because he started off the season great. He obviously went to the what is it called in season tournament and had
Yeah.
like a phenomenal run. That was probably his best stretch. It was like
Oh yeah.
December. He nearly had 2 triple doubles with no turnovers. He had one, and then the game after he almost had a triple double with no turnovers, which was pretty impressive. It was impressive him getting to that position in general. Um, and within the in season tournament, he was playing his heart out. He was averaging 26.7 points, 4.9 rebounds per game, 13.3 assists per game, 1.3 steals, 54.4 field goal percentage, 42.5% from 3. That stretch, like I could see if he averaged that throughout the entire season, then I could see an argument about him passing Brunson, maybe even Curry. But unfortunately, he did get injured, and that like lowered his stock like an all time. I don't think he is as overrated as a lot of people say he is. Like I've heard a lot of people say that he does not deserve to be in the Olympics, and he's not like good. Like I've heard so many people over
That's
hate on this
crazy.
guy, but he is
Yeah.
definitely one of the best passers in the league. Like he led the league in assists per game. What else do I have here? He was first in assists, third in passes per game, first in points from assists per game, and potential assists per game. The man just loves passing the rock. He's the opposite of Michael Porter Jr. He just always passes the rock. Sometimes too much though. Like in the playoffs, he probably should have shot the ball a bit more. There was games where he only had like 9 points when the team needed another offensive push. So that's also another reason why I have him lower because of the playoff performance. Like I think if he was a bit more aggressive and shot the ball a bit more, uh, even though the Pacers had an incredible run, the Pacers probably would have done better with Tyrese shooting the ball a bit more because he is an efficient shooter when he wants to be, but he didn't do that in the playoffs. So I think because of his injury and that making him dip a bit throughout the season and his playoff performance, I don't think he's better than Brunson or Steph. But again, if he could go back to where that in season tournament mode that he was in, he could definitely have the potential of for sure passing Brunson, but maybe even Steph. Like he's already a way better ball distributor than Brunson. It's the scoring aspect that like Jalen Brunson has him like at a different level as well. And then defensively they both kind of suck there, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. I will say all those points are fair for sure. Yeah. Obviously Tyrese still has room for growth. Obviously trending in a really good direction right now. Sometimes he is a little bit too unselfish to the point where he does pass a little bit too much, as you mentioned, when probably he should shoot it because like he is a pretty good 3-point shooter. Also, we have seen him make all those clutch shots. Like I specifically remember his clutch shots he made against the Celtics in the in-season tournament when they upset Boston, which I wish they could have done in the playoffs, but unfortunately they weren't able to. But that was a really cool game to see, though, in the in-season tournament, though. I could definitely see what you're saying, and like as a, I feel like maybe for their respective teams this season, Tyrese and Brunson might end up doing better because they have better teams, and Curry's Warriors is like definitely on the decline. But like as overall players, I would say probably you have a good point there. And like I will say this. If we were talking about Olympic play, probably Steph would be like the number one. Clearly, I mean, we've seen how great he was in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as far as like in the NBA, I guess some of the factors are slightly different. So yeah, somewhat of a tough order toss up I had there. But one thing that we did not have any debate on is that Shea was number two and Luca was number one. And
Yes.
I think we can speak slightly on that. So I would say Shea number two because similar to those other guys, other young guys they mentioned, constantly taking leaps forward, but this guy like even more so, and a much bigger leap. And then like that was practically like OKC's real year of contention because like they were in their rebuild mode all those years when he first joined them. Like obviously his first year when he got traded to OKC in the Paul George deal, OKC made the playoffs when they had Chris Paul that one year. That was just completely unexpected overachieving. After that, rebuild years, OKC didn't really win a lot, but then gradually getting better and better, stockpiling those draft picks, and now they have themselves as contenders. And obviously, Shea and his playmaking a huge factor. And definitely the Clippers, I'm sure, are seeing their consequence of giving up on him so early. I mean, I heard that Doc tried to convince Kawhi, like, you should take a chance on this guy, see what he can do. But Kawhi got impatient. He wanted Paul George. And as they say, the rest is history. We talked about this the other day, earlier this week. Um, how, I guess, who we think won the trade between the Clippers and the Thunder in the Paul George deal. Um, Me personally, I think that OKC won it, like, because obviously neither team won a championship off of it. But like the fact that Paul George is now no longer a Clipper, and then SGA is doing great things with OKC and potentially could bring them to a championship, maybe. I mean, after all, they were the 1 seed last year and constantly getting better. I just feel like, definitely after that trade, OKC is way better set up going forward than the Clippers are. But until one of them, I guess, I mean, we don't know if they're either of them going to win a championship. But I guess until one of them like gets a little bit further, I guess it's to be determined. But I would say I think that OKC set themselves up way better from that trade than the Clippers. But yeah, huge reason due to SGA. Anything you want to add on SGA being number two?
Yeah, he definitely deserves to be number two. The man's averaged 30.1 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 6.2 assists per game, 2 steals per game, which is notable because he was second in steals per game. He was third most points per game. Uh, this guy can score and defend. He can do average a nice 31 points per game with great efficiency, and he could do some steals, some deflections. He was third in deflections with 3.5 a game, and total deflections with 263 total. He was fourth most in blocks per game for guards as well. So this guy can do it on both ends and play make a little bit. He was ninth in assists per game. I just don't think on. I guess the reason why I don't have him number one, I guess, is because he is a phenomenal offensive player, but Luka is like a generational offensive player.
Right.
Like looking at his stats now, he led the league in scoring with 33.9 points per game. He was second in the league in assists per game with 9.8. He averaged 9.2 rebounds per game. So he almost averaged a triple double this season while improving on his 3-point percentage, while having a 61.7 true shooting percentage. He averaged the most rebounds by a point guard. This is his best season with the 3-point percentage. And yeah, he was second in both points from assists per game and potential assists per game. He made the finals as the fifth seed, bouncing Shea and the OKC Thunder. He was third in MVP voting, right behind Shea, but we all know that big reason why Shea was ahead of Luka was because of team success. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this Luka might not be as great as Shea when it comes on the defensive side, but like everywhere else, this man is scoring more. He is playmaking a lot more. He averages near a triple double. He just this season scored 73 points in a game. He's doing everything you want from a point guard, but more. Like he's doing it all. And yeah, I could definitely see him having like an MVP season once again this coming season. I hope the Mavs are gonna do good for Luca's sake, but we'll see about that. Um, but yeah, why is Luca your number one?
Yeah, I so a lot of things you mentioned. Clearly the top point guard in the league right now. Um, he's just the complete package. Honestly, a really explosive scoring, instant scoring machine, playmaker. I will say probably if there's anything that he could improve on a little bit, maybe like the consistency of his shooting. But like even then, like he's still really damn good there. And I do remember do you remember Luca coming into the draft? The There were people that were comparing him to LeBron. I'll be honest, I never really understood that comparison because I don't see any similarities between their games.
I can kind of
Like,
see it. Luca's kind of big for his position, but he's a great playmaker like LeBron. They do like a little bit of everything. They
yeah,
always have the ball in their hands. That's how they succeed. So I can see the comparison for sure.
yeah. I think that one thing that just makes me, I guess, understand the comparison less is like the fact that one of them is literally a guard and the other one is like more of a forward. But not to say like they're both capable of playing out of position. Like LeBron can clearly play all five positions, and then Luca, I don't know about the center, but I'm sure he could play like at least three positions of the one to the three. Um, so I can definitely see some similarities, but also quite a few differences. Um, but yeah, nonetheless, though, if you were to get comparisons to LeBron, then that says that you're quite great. And Luca, absolutely. Like, I really do think that if he had like the thing is like his team is really good, but I guess if his team would have just showed up in the finals, he could have had a much better chance of potentially winning his first championship. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be this year, but hopefully, a learning lesson. They get better from the experience, and then they can win one soon in the future. Kind of like how the Celtics lost the finals a few years ago, and then ultimately they came back this year and they won theirs. Hopefully, a similar thing for the Mavs.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. It would be a shame if Luca doesn't win a championship by the time he retires, but he's still very, very young, so I'm sure
Yeah,
the time will come.
for
Hopefully
sure.
sooner than later. But yeah, is there anybody else you want to talk about before we end things off?
I think we practically covered everything here, so I don't think there's anything else needed to be mentioned.
All right, so let's do a little recap. Who are the top 15 point guards in your opinion?
Yeah. So for my list, number 15, I got Drew Holiday. Number 14, I got Cade Cunningham. Number 13, I got Tyrese Maxey. Number 12, I got De'Aaron Fox. Number 11, Jamal Murray. 10, LaMelo Ball. 9, Kyrie Irving. 8, Damian Lillard. 7, Trae Young. 6, John Morant. 5, Steph Curry. 4, Jalen Brunson. 3, Tyrese Halliburton. 2, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And at number 1, Luka Doncic.
Nice. I still can't believe Steph is not in your top three, but I digress.
Kind
I digress.
of crazy, though, I will say.
All right, should I go over my list then?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at number 15, I have Drew Holiday. 14, LaMelo Ball. 13, Cade Cunningham. 12, Kyrie Irving. 11, Jamal Murray. 10, Damian Lillard. 9, De'Aaron Fox. 8, Tyrese Maxey. 7, John Morant. 6, Trae Young. 5, Tyrese Halliburton. 4, Jalen Brunson. 3, Stephen Curry. 2, Shea. And number 1, Luka Doncic. So overall, our lists are very, very similar. There's just some positioning that's a little bit different.
Yeah,
But yeah, we got all the same players, which is actually the craziest part, I think.
yeah, It is. Yeah, that is pretty crazy. We got like the same set of players, just a different sequence. Um, as mentioned earlier, it just proves that we know our ball knowledge. Um, yeah, aside from that, I guess in other words, the top 20, I mean, no, not the top 20, the top 15 point guards in the league are pretty much indistinguishable then because we got the same lineup of players.
Yeah, at least to us. But you guys let us know what you think. Did we have good lists? Did we not? Let us know. But I think that's it for today, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. We covered our agenda. Um, it actually ended up being quite long. Didn't we were actually unsure how long it would take.
Yeah.
We were like shoot, will it take off enough time? Well, now we know it clearly did. But
Imagine doing
yeah,
30. That'd be
oh,
so crazy.
that would be really crazy. Yeah, definitely good. We wouldn't do that. Honestly, if it was 30, might as well just list one point guard from each team, like the best point guard from each team. Unless it's like a really bad point guard or a team that has like no good point guards, which at the top of my head I can't think of. But yeah, 30 would definitely be too much.
Right. But yeah, that's it for us. In regards to point guards, next week we will be talking about our top 15 shooting guards. And it'll probably be less exciting since there's less great shooting guards. But we'll go over that next week, I guess. But if you want to check that out, make sure you are subscribed to the channel or following along on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Speaking of following, follow us on our social medias. From time to time, we chime in and talk basketball on TikTok, on Twitter. So check it out if you're interested. And yeah, anything you want to say before we head out?
Just want to say, per usual, thank you guys for the constant support and for tuning in. And it's greatly appreciated. We wouldn't be as far as we are without you guys. If you guys like our content, please make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if likewise, follow us on our other platforms on Spotify, social media, all that, you name it. And definitely stay tuned. As Memo mentioned, we'll be continuing the series next week, the top 15 shooting guards. Probably not as exciting as this episode, but definitely still going to be some fun. So stay tuned for that. And then once we finish the series, we got some other heat to cover. And then before you know it, NBA season will be here. So definitely no shortage of content coming from us. So make sure you guys stay tuned.
Yeah, that's for sure. So stay tuned, and we'll see you all next week. Bye bye.